Hi guys, going to start us off today with medieval period and the causes. I'm going to give you a quick intro and then we're going to go from there. Now, first thing to be aware of in this period is everyone's Christian, incredibly religious period. With this becomes influence. You need to know a little bit of background on the church. Headed by the Pope in Rome, Italy is the centre of Catholicism in this period. Now, what do people believe? The reality of heaven and hell. You see this with the doom paintings in the churches. Regular people are terrified of potentially going to hell and living eternal damnation. And the only way to avoid this was going to church and obeying the church and doing what the priest said. Now, with this comes a lot of power. The church also controls education, including physicians, but also remember, in this topic, one of the key things is the church has control of what is taught and what is published. So this is a massive sign of lack of progression. Okay, so any question that comes up based on lack of progress in the medieval period, the churches always you go to, because it stifles everything. They're also very rich and powerful, so of course they're able to control with this show of wealth. Right, now we look at two really key figures during this period, Hippocrates and Galen. But why? Well, the ancient world of Greece and Rome, that was in the medieval period. Now there's an anachronistic, an outdated term for this early Middle Age period called the Dark Ages. Historians don't like to use it now, but because it's not entirely true. However, there was a belief that as society had kind of regressed since ancient Greece and Rome. So this is why they latched on to these ancient authors, these ancient healers, because they saw them as bringing wisdom, this wisdom of the lost past. So you should all be very comfortable and aware of Hippocrates and Galen. Hippocrates comes first, remember, and Galen builds on his ideas. So again, this is the idea of lost knowledge, lost wisdom coming to the forefront, and the idea that Greece and Rome is still influencing the present. Now, what do they bring to the table? Well, Hippocrates, remember, is known for his observation. He's known for his theories, and in particular, this idea of the four humours. So it comes from the four elements of air, fire, earth, and water. And they believed that this is how the earth functioned. And for observing these four seasons, that each season must have a dominant element. So Hippocrates applied this to the four humours, and we're all made up of each one of these elements. Again, if they're unbalanced, you're ill. That's the explanation. So, applying this theory to the human body, he believed our body is made up of four humours: yellow bile, blood, black bile, and phlegm, which each match the season. This is important for when we get to the Renaissance period and we look at somebody like Thomas Sydenham, who advises to move away from this idea, move away from attaching somebody to a season and to actually look at their illness. So I always want you to be keeping that in mind when you're going through this. You need to be comparing it to your later periods, because the whole thing here is change and continuity. That's where your question normally lies. Okay, progress, change, continuity, limited progress, better understanding, etc. So here we have, if your humours are unbalanced, then what's the method of treatment? Balancing the humours. So again, just make a note of matching four humours to each of the seasons. It's not massively integral. It's just good if you can bring it into a question, like, for instance, with somebody like Sydenham, or potentially an explain question based on believed causes of disease during the medieval period. This bulks up your evidence. Right. Okay. So where does Galen come into it? Well, he comes into it by building on the theory of the four humours and developing the theory of opposites. Now remember, this is simply, you will be prescribed the opposite to that humour. So if you look back in the slides, you'll see each humour matches a temperature. So Galen would advise you should eat something hot like peppers if you have too much phlegm, which is a cold humour. This would balance it out. Again, bloodletting massively matches this. So bloodletting links to balancing humours and purging. Remember, we'll look at that later. All right. So the great big book of everything. Now, the reason why Galen is so dominant during this period is primarily because the number of texts he produced. Make a note of that 350 texts. It's huge. It absolutely dominates this period. Again, nothing else is produced. Remember, the church has control. Anybody who's come in with new ideas is being dismissed because Galen dominates and the church likes Galen's ideas. Remember though, Galen's dead. He's not alive during the medieval period. This is an ancient author that the church are using and translating his books. Now, again, Galen, a lot of his research was based on studying the anatomy of pigs and animals. This, again, we can apply this knowledge later in the Renaissance, where we look at somebody like Vesalius and how he shows progression or increased understanding. Okay, so again, why is Galen so important? Well, he's taught in all the top universities. Okay. And again, everything is based on his ideas. Remember as well, if there was something called vivisection, which we'll look at a little bit later, but even if they opened up the body of a criminal, which they never normally did, this was just a rare occurrence, and only be criminals, and it was different to what Galen said, the physician would say, well, that's because he sinned. So keep that in mind. Okay, other causes is the astrology. So astrology is quite important. They link the star signs to the 4 elements. They also linked it to Galen's ideas of medicine. So the idea that an operation on the head should be avoided when the moon is in the sign of Aries. So this is how they applied astrology. We'll also come back to that when we look at the Black Death or the Great Plague. But yeah, this is an idea of what's causing the disease. Well, stars are aligning, saying something bad is going to happen. Miasma. So this was written about by both Galen and Hippocrates. The idea that bad air was filled with harmful fumes. Again, important thing about miasma, it's a continued believed cause all the way up until industrial period. This is quite useful when if you have a similarity question. Okay, so do apply in that way. Remember, it's used. It's believed cause in cholera, in the 1830s to 1850s. So again, keep that in mind. But miasma is a great one to be aware of. Again, these bad smells were also associated with God. So nice smelling homes seen as spiritually clean. Again, we'll look into prevention and treatment methods the further on we get. And lastly, God, punishment by God. Remember how dominant the church is. They, if you are ill, one of the dominant ideas is God's punishing you. You've sinned, so you haven't been following the church's teachings. So Galen would write that the body was clearly designed for a purpose, that different parts of the body were meant to work together in balance. He also believed in the idea of the soul. This is crucial to why the church back him. This matches the church's ideas. They thought, right, this is a guy we can get on board with. It fits into what we believe. He's the only one people should read. We can dominate from there. And that's it, guys. Honestly, in medieval period, if you have that base understanding of those 4 causes, miasma, astrology, 4 humours and punishment by God, you can apply that later on in this course. You can apply that for the entire topic, because everything from this period is change and continuity. What is changing? What is continuing on? We'll discuss that more when we get to the Renaissance, but please just keep that in mind throughout. Medicine, if you look at that foundation knowledge and then watch how things differ and progress throughout periods, you'll be fine. So I'll catch you next time, guys.